This is an M-rated game, so viewer discretion is advised. Life is Strange Double Exposure. I love narrative games. They're some of my favorites to play, like Firewatch or the Stanley Parable. However, it's a very hard genre to do, mainly because you could lose your audience with a very slow story or bad pacing. I've never played any of the Life is Strange games, and coming to this, all I knew was that one of the characters could time travel. As a person who's never played the series, and starting on this one, I wouldn't suggest it. You could do it and follow the story quite well, but they're going to spoil plot points and twists of the other games. They run down who the villain of the previous game was, and why this person was a villain, and what happened to the town after the choice you made. Now the story is about Max, whose friend is killed, and instead of being able to go back in time to stop it, her power sent her to a parallel world, where her friend is still alive. She uses this opportunity to investigate who might have wanted to hurt her friend, while shifting back and forth to a world where her friend is dead, and one where she's alive. The story is broken down into 5 chapters. The gameplay is broken down into sections that you have to explore, and things you need to do before you move on to the next section. The story is set at a college, and while it was a little annoying at first trying to figure out where to go, there are signs everywhere. But the game does a better job later on of containing the areas you need to explore, so it's not just hunting down one person in an area with multiple loading zones. Loading screens in this game were more annoying than an issue. It sure did break up the flow of the story after seeing a scene and then a 20-second load time. This was a really big problem in the final chapter. It really broke the immersion they were trying to do. As you're playing the game and talking to people, sometimes there'll be choices you have to make that will affect the story later on. It won't change the ending much, but people will react to you in different ways depending on the way that you treat them. Like, for example, you might be able to solve a puzzle differently if they owe you a favor. The murder mystery is told very slowly, and it takes about 2 hours even to get to that point. Then it takes another break to deal with the parallel worlds. I do wish it picked up the pace a lot. Funny enough, the final 2 chapters did just that. The last 2 chapters had their own problems as well, because the story was a bigger problem than the pacing at the end of the game. There was one character who had constant personality changes. He was a jerk one minute and hitting on Max the next. He was the leader of the secret society and the president's secretary. His character was so inconsistent. It made me feel like they were originally going to make 2 different characters and just merge them together because they ran out of time. Max had a couple love interests in this one. One was the guy that I mentioned before, and this one, and she felt really flat for me. There just wasn't anything interesting about her, and they both felt like they were there just to give Max someone to connect with. You can choose to romance or just be friends, and I definitely chose friend. Honestly, there was more of a connection between her killed and alive friend than any of her official love interests. Max herself isn't spared from bad character design. It wasn't until chapter 3 when I found out she wasn't a student going to this college. She was a teacher! I was wondering why she had this huge cottage in the woods, and why she never went to class. However, she never taught a class either. There was nothing to suggest that she was a teacher. When she talked to people, I just assumed they were talking to classmates, as she looks like the same age as them. There are just so many interesting threads that are not explored, or just dropped. What's going on with the secret society? Where is Max's doppelganger in the world where her friend is alive? And most importantly, anything that involves that insane time cop rules sequence. If you know the movie, you know what I'm talking about. I wanted any explanation of that. It felt like cut content. They will occasionally have you take pictures, mostly with a Polaroid camera, and they let you double expose the picture so you can move the picture around the picture. That is incredibly stupid, and I'm pretty sure Polaroid instant cameras didn't have the ability to do that. Why on earth would a camera manufacturer ever give you that ability? What would be the point of doing that? I understood why it's in the game, but it never made any logical sense. The different parallel world that you could slide to was an interesting concept. The only real difference was that your friend is dead in one, and in the other they weren't. You could only go to the other world at certain points, and it did make me wonder why more people didn't freak out seeing her vanish into thin air. It only happened once, and that's because Max had to tell them to watch her do it. People are so oblivious in this title. You can bring things back from the other world, or you can access areas that you couldn't in the other world. You're going to need to do this consistently in order to solve the death of your friend. I liked how most of the areas were enclosed, so it wasn't too difficult to figure out what you needed to do. Now the whole game is voiced, which is great. I did have to get used to the main character's voice, as she was a teeth talker, and it did make it hard to understand her sometimes. Everything was subtitled as well, which was very helpful. I think voice acting when you're telling a deep story should be required. It brings out the emotion of what's happening more than just reading it on the screen. And overall, the voice actors in this did a good job. Life is Strange Double Exposure was okay. It did have some pacing issues in the first couple chapters, and it went off the rails in the last. There were a couple compelling characters, but for the most part, I didn't want to hang out with any of them. Max and her friend she was trying to save definitely had the most compelling friendship in the game, and it's the reason you're going to want to keep playing till the end. Now this is normally $49.99, and I would just wait for a deep sale. It's a mixed bag and not something I would replay. However, it did make me interested in the other games in the series. It's too bad that I'm now spoiled on how it ends. If you're a fan of the series, you might like this, but I would definitely wait for it to go on sale.